Treaty with the Ute, March 2nd, 1868, ratified July 25th, 1868. Articles of a treaty and agreement made and entered into at Washington City, D.C. on the 2nd day of March, 1868, by and between Nathaniel G. Taylor, Commissioner of Indian Affairs, Alexander C. Hunt, Governor of Colorado Territory and ex officio Superintendent of Indian Affairs, and Kit Carson, duly authorized to represent the United States of the one part and the representatives of the Tabaquash, Muash, Capote, Weemanoosh, Yampa, Grand River, and Uintah bands of Ute Indians, whose names are hereunto subscribed, duly authorized and empowered to act for the body of the people of said bands of the other part. Witness. Article 1. All of the provisions of the treaty concluded with the Tabaquash Band of Utah Indians October 7, 1863, is submitted by the Senate of the U.S. and proclaimed December 14, 1864, which are not inconsistent with the provisions of this treaty as hereinafter provided, are hereby reaffirmed and declared to be applicable and to continue in force as well to the other bands respectively parties to this treaty as to the Tabaquash Band of Utah Indians. Article 2. The U.S. agree that the following district of country, to wit, commencing at that point on the southern boundary of the territory of Colorado, where the meridian of longitude 107 west from Greenwich crosses the same, running thence north with said meridian to a point of 50 miles, due north of where said meridian intersects the 40th parallel of north latitude, thence due west to the western boundary line of said territory, thence south with said western boundary line of said territory to the southern boundary line of said territory, thence east with said southern boundary line to the place of beginning, shall be, and the same is hereby set apart for the absolute and undisturbed use and occupation of the Indians herein named, and for such other friendly tribes or individual Indians as from time to time may be willing with the consent of the U.S. to admit among them. And the U.S. now solemnly agree that no persons except those herein authorized so to do, and except such officers, agents, and employees of the government as may be authorized to enter upon Indian reservations in discharge of duties enjoined by law, shall ever be permitted to pass over, settle upon, or reside in the territory described in this article, except as herein otherwise provided. Article 3. It is further agreed by the Indians parties hereto that henceforth they will and do hereby relinquish all claims and rights in and to any portion of the U.S. or territories except such as are embraced in the limits defined in the preceding article. Article 4. The U.S. agreed to establish two agencies on the reservation provided for in Article 2, one for the Grand River, Yampa, and the Uintah bands on White River, and the other for the Tabaquash, Muache, Weemanoosh, and Capote bands on the Rio de los Pinos on the reservation, and its own proper expense to construct at each of said agencies a warehouse or storeroom for the use of the agent in storing goods belonging to the Indians, to cost not exceeding $1,500, an agency building for the residence of the agent to cost not exceeding $3,000, and 4 other buildings for a carpenter, farmer, blacksmith, and miller, each to cost not exceeding $2,000, also a schoolhouse or mission building, so soon as a sufficient number of children can be induced by the agent to attend school, which shall not cost exceeding $5,000. The U.S. agree further to cause to be erected on said reservation and near to each agency herein authorized respectively a good water power sawmill with a grist mill and a shingle machine attached, the same to cost not exceeding $8,000 each, provided the same shall not be erected until such time as the Secretary of Interior may think it necessary to the wants of the Indians. The U.S. agree that the agents for said Indians in the future shall make their homes at the agency building, that they shall reside among Indians, and keep an office open at all times for the purpose of prompt and diligent inquiry into such matters of complaint by and against Indians as may be presented for investigation under the provisions of their treaty stipulations, as also for the faithful discharge of other duties enjoined on them by law. In all cases of depredation on person or property, they shall cause the evidence to be taken in writing and forwarded, together with their findings, to the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, whose decision, subject to the revision of the Secretary of Interior, shall be binding on the parties to this treaty. Article 6. If bad men among the whites or among other people subject to the authority of the U.S. shall commit any wrong upon the person or property of the Indians, the U.S. will, upon proof made to the agent forwarded to the Commissioner of Indian Affairs at Washington City, proceed at once to cause the offender to be arrested and punished according to the laws of the U.S. and also reimburse the injured person for the loss sustained. If bad men among Indians shall commit a wrong or depredation upon the person or property of anyone white, black, or Indian, subject to the authority of the U.S. and at peace therewith, the tribes here named solemnly agree that they will, on proof made to their agent and notice to him, deliver up the wrongdoer to the U.S. to be tried and punished according to its laws. and in case they willfully refuse so to do, the person injured shall be reimbursed for his loss from the annuities or other monies due or to become due to them under this or other treaties made with the U.S. Article 7. If any individual belonging to said tribe of Indians or legally incorporated with them, being the head of a family, shall desire to commence farming, he shall have the privilege to select, in the presence and with the assistance of the agent then in charge by metes and bounds, a tract of land within said reservation not exceeding 160 acres in extent, which tract, when so selected, certified, and recorded in the land book as herein directed, shall cease to be held in common, but the same may be occupied and held in exclusive possession of the person selecting it and his family, so long as he or they may continue to cultivate it. Any person over 18 years of age, not being the head of a family, may in like manner select and cause to be certified to him or her for purposes of cultivation a quantity of land not exceeding 80 acres in extent, and thereupon be entitled to the exclusive possession of the same as above directed. For each tract of land so selected, a certificate containing a description thereof and the name of the person selecting it, with a certificate endorsed thereon that the same has been recorded, shall be delivered to the party entitled to it, but the agent after the same shall have been recorded by him in a book to be kept in his office, subject to inspection, which said book shall be known as the Ute Land Book. The President may at any time order a survey of the reservation, and when so surveyed, Congress shall provide for protecting the rights of such Indian settlers and their improvements, and may fix the character of the title held by each. The U.S. may pass such laws on the subject of alienation and descent of property, and on all subjects connected with the government of the Indians on said reservation and the internal police thereof, as may be thought proper. Article 8. In order to ensure the civilization of the bands entering into this treaty, the necessity of education is admitted, especially by such of them as may be engaged in either pastoral, agricultural, or other peaceful pursuits of civilized life on said reservation. And they therefore pledge themselves to induce their children, male and female, between the ages of 7 and 18 years to attend school, and it is hereby made the duty of the agent for said Indians to see that the stipulation is complied with to the greatest possible extent, and the U.S. agree that for every 30 children between said ages who can be induced to attend school, a house shall be provided, and a teacher competent to teach the elementary branches of an English education shall be furnished, who will reside among said Indians and faithfully discharge his or her duties as teacher. The provisions of this article to continue for not less than 20 years. Article 9. When the head of a family or lodge shall have selected lands and received a certificate as above described, and the agent shall be satisfied that he intends in good faith to commence cultivating the soil for a living, he shall be entitled to receive seeds and agricultural implements for the first year, not exceeding in value $100, and for each succeeding year he shall continue to farm for a period of 3 years more. He shall be entitled to receive seeds and implements as aforesaid, not exceed in value $50, and it is further stipulated that such persons as commence farming shall receive instructions from the farmer herein provided for, and it is further stipulated that an additional blacksmith to the one provided for in the Treaty of October 7th, 1863, referred to in Article 1 of this treaty, shall be provided with such iron, steel, and other material as may be needed for the Uintah, Yampa, and Grand River Agency. Article 10. At any time after 10 years from the making of this treaty, the U.S. shall have the privilege of withdrawing the farmers, blacksmiths, carpenters, and millers herein, and in the Treaty of October 7, 1863, referred to in Article 1 of this treaty, provided for, but in case of such withdrawal, an additional sum thereafter of $10,000 per annum shall be devoted to the education of said Indians. And the Commissioner of Indian Affairs shall, upon careful inquiry into their condition, make such rules and regulations, subject to the approval of the Secretary of Interior, for the expenditure of said sum as will best promote the educational and moral improvement of said Indians. Article 11. That a sum sufficient in the discretion of Congress for the absolute wants of said Indians, but not to exceed $30,000 per annum for 30 years, shall be expended under the direction of the Secretary of Interior for clothing, blankets, and such other articles of utility as he may think proper and necessary upon full official reports of the condition and wants of said Indians. Article 12. That an additional sum sufficient in the discretion of Congress, but not to exceed $30,000 per annum, to supply the wants of said Indians for food, shall be annually expended under the direction of the Secretary of Interior in supplying said Indians with beef, mutton, wheat, flour, beans, and potatoes until such time as said Indians shall be found to be capable of sustaining themselves. Article 13. That for the purpose of inducing said Indians to adopt habits of civilized life and become self-sustaining, the sum of $45,000 for the first year shall be expended under the direction of the Secretary of Interior, and providing each lodge or head of a family in said confederated bands with one gentle American cow, as distinguished from the ordinary Mexican or Texas breed, and 5 head of sheep. Article 14. The said confederated bands agree that, whensoever, in the opinion of the President of the U.S., a public interest may require that all roads, highways, and railroads authorized by law shall have the right of way through the reservations herein designated. Article 15. The U.S. hereby agreed to furnish the Indians with teachers, carpenters, millers, farmers, and blacksmiths, as herein contemplated, and that such appropriation shall be made from time to time on the estimates of the Secretary of Interior, as will be sufficient to employ such persons. Article 16. No treaty for the cession of any portion or part of the reservation herein described, which may be held in common, shall be of any validity or force as against the said Indians, unless executed and signed by at least 3/4 of all the adult male Indians occupying or interested in the same, and no cession by the tribe shall be understood or construed in such manner as to deprive, without his consent, any individual member of the tribe of his right to any tract of land selected by him as provided in Article 7 of this treaty. Article 17. All appropriations now made or to be hereafter made, as well as goods and stocks due these Indians under existing treaties, shall apply as if this treaty had not been made, and be divided proportionally among the 7 bands named in this treaty, as also shall all annuities and allowances hereafter to be made, provided that if any chief of either of the confederated bands make war against the people of the U.S., or in any manner violate this treaty in any essential part, said chief shall forfeit his position as chief and all rights to any of the benefits of this treaty. But provided further, any Indian of either of these confederated bands who shall remain at peace and abide by the terms of this treaty in all its essentials shall be entitled to its benefits and provisions, notwithstanding his particular chief and band may have forfeited their rights thereto. In testimony whereof the commissioners is aforesaid on the part of the U.S. and the undersigned representatives of the Tabaquash, Muache, Capote, Wimnuch, Yampa, Grand River, and Uintah bands of Indians, duly authorized and empowered to act for the body of the people of said bands, have hereunto set their hands and seals at the place and on the day, month, and year first hereinbefore written. N.G. Taylor, A.C. Hunt, Governor, and etc. Kit Carson, Commissioner on the part of the U.S. U. Ray, his ex-mark. Kaniach, his ex-mark. Ankatosh, his ex-mark. Jose Maria, his ex-mark. And Nika Agat, or Greenleaf, his ex-mark. Guerrero, his ex-mark. Paant, his ex-mark. Piat, his ex-mark. Suviap, his ex-mark. Pabusat, his ex-mark. Witnesses: Daniel C. Oakes, U.S. Indian Agent. Lafayette Head, U.S. Indian Agent. U.M. Curtis, Interpreter. H.P. Bennett, Albert G. Boone, E.H. Kellogg, William G. Godfrey. We, the chiefs and headmen of the aforesaid named bands of Ute Indians, duly authorized by our people to hereby assent and agree to the amendment of the Senate, the same having been interpreted to us, and being fully understood by us, witness our hands and seals on the days and dates set opposite our names respectively. Date of signing, August 15th, 1868. Signatures and interpretation of names and their bands follow. Grand River Ute Indians. Sakawiak, his ex-mark, white lock of hair. Tanach, his ex-mark, granite rock. Pa-pitch, his ex-mark, sweet herb. Tabi-o-sucken, his ex-mark, sunrise. Shuwa-Tawicket, his ex-mark, rainbow. Priya, his ex-mark, black-tailed deer. Uintah Ute Indians. His ex-mark, pine tree. Antro, his ex-mark, rocking. Pa, his ex-mark, water. Queernaush, his ex-mark, eagle. Yamana, his ex-mark, briar. Signed in the presence of A. Sagendorf, Uriah M. Curtis, Special Interpreter. E.H. Kellogg, Secretary, Colorado Indian Superintendency. Daniel C. Oakes, U.S. Indian Agent. Louis O. Howell. Yampas. Sawatwit Sawitch, his ex-mark, Blue River. Colorado, his ex-mark, red. Paant, his ex-mark, tall. Syrup, his ex-mark, lodgepole sun. Nik-a-aga, his ex-mark, greenleaf. Signed in the presence of E.H. Kellogg, Secretary, Indian Superintendency, Colorado Territory. U.M. Curtis, Special U.S. Interpreter. Daniel C. Oakes, U.S. Indian Agent. H.P. Bennett, Louis O. Howell. Assigned September 14th. Muaches. Henri, his ex-mark, arrow. Shawana, his ex-mark, blue flower. Guerrero, his ex-mark, light-haired. Tapawet, Chicot, his ex-mark, sunrise. Akantash, his ex-mark, red cloud. Kaniach, his ex-mark, one who would own. Tabagaushes. Akanash, his ex-mark, red cloud. Kaniach, his X mark, one who was taken down. Inkatosh, his X mark, red. Sapowanari, his X mark. Tasasaraibi, his X mark. Nakeket, his X mark. Yamaaj, his X mark. Son to Tasasaraibi or George. Signed in the presence of William J. Godfrey, Daniel C. Oakes, U.S. Indian Agent, Edward R. Harris, Special Interpreter, E.H. Kellogg, Secretary, Colorado Superintendency, Louis O. Howe, Uriah M. Curtis, Interpreter. To the other copy of these instruments are signed as witnesses the following names: Juan Martin Martinez, friend of Indians, Albert H. Pfeiffer, their old agent, and Manuel Lucero. Date of signing, September 24th, Capotas, Utes. Sobota, his X mark, a big frock. Isidro, his X mark. Sawawachi, his X mark, a green herb. Babuzat, his X mark, a crystal drop water. Sabuichi, his X mark, wounded in the abdomen. Tuiwish, his X mark, long-tailed deer. Italia, his X mark. Iriat Awap, his X mark, water carrier. Askawat, his X mark, red eyes. Akia Bako Eagle, his X mark, red snake. Martin, his X mark, named after a Mexican friend. Awachi, his X mark. Tapapawati, his X mark. Suviath, his X mark, the soup of a bird. Arrow, his X mark. Signed in the presence of Lafayette Head, Albert H. Pfeiffer, Manuel Lucero, E.H. Kellogg, Secretary, Colorado Indian Superintendency, Uriah M. Curtis, Interpreter, Daniel C. Oakes, U.S. Indian Agent. Date of signing, September 25th. Band Wimi Nuches Utes. Paja Chope, his X mark, a claw. Panoar, his X mark, broad brow. Subitoao, his X mark, ugly man. Tesagera Powet, his X mark, white eyes. Sapawat Wat, his X mark, big belly. Querata, his X mark, a bear. Signed in the presence of Lafayette Head, Manuel Lucero, Albert H. Pfeiffer, E.H. Kellogg, Secretary, Colorado Indian Superintendency, Juan Martin Martinez, Interpreter and friend, Daniel C. Oakes, U.S. Indian Agent, Uriah M. Curtis, Interpreter. I hereby certify that pursuant to the order from the Commissioner of Indian Affairs dated August 4th, 1868, I visited and held councils with the various bands of Ute Indians at the times and places named in this instrument, and to all those familiar with the provisions of the treaty referred to have had the Senate amendment fully interpreted to them, and to all those not familiar with the treaty itself, I have had the same fully explained and interpreted, and the 47 chiefs whose names are hereunto subscribed place their names to this instrument with a full knowledge of its contents, and likewise with the provisions of the treaty itself, given under my hand at Denver, this 14th day of October, 1868, A.C. Hunt, Governor ex officio, Superintendent Indian Affairs.